wonderful things about the ISC, and really the reason why I keep coming back, is because it really is a community. It's a community based on fellowship. It's a community based on acceptance of each other. It's a community based on love. And, you know, who wouldn't want to be a part of that? I think it was Brittain Brown that said, in the absence of love and belonging, there will always be suffering. And so there is so much suffering in the world right now. There is such a need for love and belonging. There's such a need for community. And so how wonderful that you are all here to honor that and to honor each other. And hopefully some of you will gain that sense of love and belonging that Brittain speaks about so beautifully, in the sense that we recognize that we're all here on a journey of love. And it's one of the very interesting things that every song that's ever been written in our lives that we ever hear, in some ways about love. It's about the finding of it, the losing of it, it being taken from us, it being stolen, there being betrayal. Every song we ever listen to has a thread of love that runs through it in some form. And yet it's the one thing in life that many of us really struggle to accept, that really struggle to find, really struggle to hold on to. And of course, any form of love that shows up in our experience, we have to be vulnerable enough to take the risk. I think love is a risk that only brave people take. And sometimes at various parts of our lives, we're not brave enough to take that risk, to let our guards down, to let ourselves truly be seen, truly be vulnerable. And one of the wonderful things about music is it helps to tap us into that power of love, and it helps us to form an idea, a concept of what we would like to experience, or really to resonate with what our version of love is. Because nobody really teaches us about love, do they? Nobody really at school ever gives us a lesson on love. We learn the hard way. We learn through heartbreak. We learn through loss. We learn through, unrequited love. We learn often from the opposite of love. And many times when we focus on love, we have a very idealized way of how we want it to show up, how we want it to feel, what we want it to be like, and in really what we also expect other people to be like in relation to us, regardless of the dynamic of love that we engage in. And so many times, and especially at Valentine's Day, when, Facebook is awash with loving messages and loving memes and all these things about what love is and what it isn't. And, many times I've said to the spirit world, what is love? And the answer always comes back that when you are in love, you do not put yourself or allow yourself to be put in harm's way. And that's one thing that, based on our backgrounds, our culture, our ethnicity sometimes, and certainly always by our life experience, our version of love is shaped often by those earlier experiences. Our experiences of what we will tolerate and not tolerate and accept and not accept in the name of love are often shaped in those very, very young, early formative years. And so many times we put ourselves in harm's way without realizing it's harm, don't we? We find ourselves in situations with good intent and an open heart and being vulnerable, hoping for love and belonging and connection. And sometimes we leave that experience doubting love, doubting ourselves, and doubting whether we can go through that again. And whether it be the loss of a loved one to the other world, or it's a loss of a loved one in this world, that pain that we experience is often the greatest of teachers. And so we can't take a class on love in school. We can't take a class on what's the right or the wrong way to experience, to give and to share love. But what we can do is lean into the discomfort of our loving experiences or experiences we've had in the name of love and learn about it from there. Because we can always choose to lean into the discomfort and learn and allow it to take us higher, or we can allow it to take us lower, so that we become more closed. And often many of us walk around in life with our emotional heart wrapped up. Every heartbreak, every hurt that we ever experience, imagine that there is around our emotional heart a layer of protection. But also consider that through that layer of protection that we build to hopefully keep the pain from getting to us, to protecting ourselves from harm, imagine that what it also does, it prevents your love being able to be expressed. It stops you showing up in the world in a way that demonstrates love and in action. And so many times in our lives, that all those experiences that come to our experience, everything that we ever go through in the name of love, is always designed to help us to refine our experience of love help us to refine and understand our beliefs about love. And Rumi, who was, many of you will have seen again on Facebook, he seems to be very popular on Facebook, even though he's been in the spirit world for many, many years. He was a beautiful Persian poet. He said that your task is not to seek love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. And isn't that the interesting thing? Because often we're too busy looking out there for out there to make us feel complete within here. That if only we could find the love of our life, if only we could hold on to our partners, if only we could keep our children close, that somehow we believe that we're safe. Somehow we believe that we'll be okay and so will they. And yet, when we can look into Rumi's words and look at how we can look to find those things within ourselves that prevent love being full, prevent love being expressed, prevent us living fully, and prevent us living a life of loving expression as well. That's really our task, I think, in a spiritual capacity. Mediumship is, as you've probably heard me say many times before, is a reunion. You know, it really is. We dilute it down to yeses and nos and rights and wrongs, and she got that right and he got that wrong. But beyond all of that, mediumship offers a reunion of love. It's a loving act. Your loved ones love you enough to demonstrate their presence. And I would hope that you, on your receipt of that mediumistic connection, you would also love them enough to be willing to hear it. Because if we are so very focused in our world on what we believe love is, we also become very attached to the outcome. We have a very clear idea about what we want it to look like, don't we? How it should look, how it should sound. And we do that in many areas of life. And certainly we do that within mediumship as well. But in our life experience, what shows up in your life will always be either a reflection of you or a reflection of God, a reflection of that loving power that runs through you all. And so when we look at putting ourselves in harm's way, that's what we need to look at in terms of understanding what love is and what love isn't. What is harm to you? What does harm mean to you? What does harm feel like to you? And I'm not necessarily suggesting that, you know, it's always got to be, you know, devastatingly painful for it to be harmful. There are the subtle things in life, that the unkind word, the thoughtless word, that can make us feel harmed, that we can harm others without thinking, without realizing. And so when we are learning about love, we have to be conscious of love. We have to be conscious not only of what we say, but also how that might be heard and felt by the world around us. Can we honestly say, each of us here today, that we have always acted lovingly, that we've always spoken lovingly? No, of course we haven't. And I'm sure for the rest of our days, we will not do that either. Because how would we learn about love without understanding loss? How would we understand about belonging without understanding isolation? So we often in life have to experience the opposite before we can experience the thing that we're looking to enjoy and enjoy in life. So who taught you about love? Who in your life, what in your life taught you about love? Because I can imagine, just as I've said that expression to you, many of you have gone back in your mind or have had an image in your thoughts about a person that taught you the most about love. And whether that be the joyous experience of love, the expression, the connection, the belonging, the identification with each other's thoughts, finishing each other's sentences, or you would have had a thought about a person that brought the opposite. You will have had a thought about a person that didn't show you kindness, that didn't show you respect, that didn't show you love. And so rather than looking out there to blame, to punish, to make them wrong, let's start to look at, why does that bother us? Why do we feel harmed by that? What is it within us? What are the barriers within ourselves that we have built against it? Because what is showing up in our experience in some way is a reflection of us. And when we can really understand that from an experiential perspective, and that isn't to say that you are being blamed or punished, and it's certainly, I don't want anybody to hear this in a way that I'm saying that, you know, it's all your fault. I'm not suggesting that at all. But what I'm suggesting is that when we can not react, we can take a moment of responsibility and look at our ability to respond to what's being offered to us, and take a second to learn, what does that show me about me, then we become really clear about what harm is and what harm isn't to us. And it really doesn't matter if people agree with you or not. It really doesn't matter if people say, I don't believe that that's right. I'm going to love you the way I want to love you. We have a right to choose how we want to experience love. We have a right to say yes to it or no to it. We have a right to be clear on what harm is and harm isn't. And we have to be then brave enough to say that, because that's often the tricky bit, isn't it? When it comes to being vulnerable, we become so fearful of losing love that we push down what we feel to keep the peace, to make life easier, or out of fear that if I say it, I'm going to lose and damage that relationship, and therefore love will not stay. But understanding this, love never shows up in one form, ever. It never shows up in one person. That power that is running through each one of us, that is available to us all, it's not denied to any of us, regardless of who you share your toothpaste with in the morning. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. It doesn't matter who you share your toothpaste with. It doesn't matter any of those things. What matters is that love does not discriminate. The ability to accept love, accept belonging, and to be vulnerable enough to be willing to step into it. That's a barrier that we need to learn to overcome. That's the barrier to connection and belonging that we need to learn to overcome. And if we can do that, can we just imagine just how powerful we would be and those in our world would be if all of our acts were layered with love, if all of our words were considered with kindness before they came out? Can we just imagine that? And I'm not suggesting that, I'm not talking about us, doing this always in prayer, because many times people pray for these things, but they don't become them themselves. So we have to be the prayer that we seek. We have to be loving to be a demonstration of that in the world, and for the world to become better as a result of that. So if we can choose, and it is a choice to be vulnerable, if we can choose to be vulnerable, I'm not suggesting it will be easy at all. In fact, Sharon and I had a conversation very briefly before I started this talk in terms of, I've been working for 30 years and I'm so nervous before I ever do a talk, so anxious before I ever do a talk. And I never used to be. And Sharon said it very beautifully. You're in touch with your feelings now. And that's the truth of it, because vulnerability is not easy. Vulnerability is really, really hard. And vulnerability can be terrifying, because here we are exposing our heart, showing up in the world, being ourselves, and not knowing if people can handle that or will handle that well. But the most compassionate people are those who are the most vulnerable, are those that are also the most boundaried. Those people who are very clear on what love is and what love isn't are often the most compassionate, because they don't waste words. They don't waste kindness. They give it where they know it will be heard, where they know it will make a difference. And so I would urge you all, as we sit here today, not just for today, but to take this out into the world, to be the prayer that you ask for. Those things that you ask for in your prayers for other people, for peace, for kindness, for love, for reunion, for hope, be a demonstration of that. Never mind praying about it. That's one thing, and that's lovely. I'm not denying that prayer isn't, valuable and valid. It really is. And the three prayers in life that will benefit every situation will be, please help me, and thank you. That covers everything. But beyond that, be a demonstration in the world of those things that you ask for, those things that you ask for yourself, and those things that you ask for other people. Be loving, be kind, be wise, be gentle, and most of all, be vulnerable, because it's in that vulnerability that change happens for the better. Thank you for listening.